President Kennedy's last day began at a Chamber of Commerce breakfast in Fort Worth. In his entourage were Vice President Lyndon Johnson and the Governor of Texas, John Connally.
Basically, his purpose for his visit to Texas, it was not just to Dallas, was to raise money for himself and for the Democratic Party, and also to enhance his standing, because he was looking forward to the election in 1964.
He couldn't let you leave Fort Worth without providing you with some protection against the rain.
I'll put it on in the White House on Monday. If you'll come up there, you'll have a chance to see it there.
His second engagement of the day was a luncheon in Dallas, a 6-minute flight away on Air Force One.
And now the Lord bless you and keep you. The Lord lift up his countenance upon you and be gracious unto you. The Lord cause his face to shine upon you and give you peace both now and forever. Amen.
From the dark, overcast, the drizzling rain of Fort Worth to the bright sunshine when we landed at Love Field in Dallas, it promised to be an absolutely spectacular day for the President, for the Vice President, for me. I was Governor of the state. Ms. Connally and I rode in the car with the President and Mrs. Kennedy. He got a very, very warm reception. Schools had turned out. The school children were lining the street by the thousands. They were applauding, and it was a very happy, joyful occasion, really.
2 cars back from the presidential limousine was Senator Ralph Yarborough with Lyndon and Lady Bird Johnson.
As we approached the city and then finally turned down Main Street toward the Trinity River, the crowd increased as we got to the heart of Dallas. And it's one of the most enthusiastic crowds I saw in any city we were in Texas on that tour. That's on the sidewalks. Now, if you looked up in the upper stories, I never saw a single smile at any window I looked at. Some looked down and looked like with dislike on the faces.
Nellie turned to the President and said, "Mr. President, you can't say now that they don't love you here in Dallas." And within a matter of a few seconds after that, we turned on Elm Street to go down to get on the Stemmons Freeway to go out to the Trade Mart where the luncheon was being held. And that's when the shots occurred. I heard what I thought was a rifle shot. I immediately reacted by turning to look over my right shoulder because that's where the sound came from. I didn't see anything out of the ordinary and was in the process of turning to look over my left shoulder when I felt a blow in the middle of my back, as if someone had hit me with a doubled up fist, about like that. The blow was of such force that it bent me over, and I immediately saw that I was covered with blood. And I knew I'd been hit. And I said, "Oh my God, they're going to kill us all." And I heard another shot that was a loud shot almost like that. And immediately I saw blood and brain tissue all over the back of the limousine. I knew then that the President had been fatally hit because Ms. Kennedy then, I heard her say, "My God, I've got his brains in my hand."
The Secret Service in the car in front of us kind of casually looked around, looked up at the back of them and rather slow to react. And it went under the underpass, and as we came up on the other side, I could see then the President's car, and there was Hill, whom I knew as a Secret Service man assigned to protect Mrs. Kennedy. He was lying across the back to hang on with the arm over in there so he could hang on at that high speed. His face turned back towards us, just writhed in agony and beating with his hand on there like a terrible thing has happened. I knew then that Kennedy had been shot. And within several minutes, we came to Parkland Hospital, and the Secret Service immediately jumped out the minute Johnson was there. They practically pulled him out and formed a cordon around him, 4 or 5, and one of them said, "Mr. President." I knew then Kennedy was dead, and I walked up to the car where Mrs. Kennedy was still there on the back seat, lying there with her head bowed over, covering the husband's head, his blood running down her leg and on her clothes, and twice saying, "They've murdered my husband. They've murdered my husband." It's the most tragic sight of my life.
The infamous magic bullet. We have that bullet exiting from President Kennedy's neck, moving forward and leftward and downward. It now stops in midair. It turns to the right. It comes back a full 18 inches, stops again, and then slams into John Connolly's back. It continues downward, and it goes through his wrist, and somehow they get that right wrist over to the left thigh. If you look at the Zapruder film, you'll see in the individual frames that John Connolly's right wrist is not near John Connolly's left thigh. The significance of this, the importance, cannot be exaggerated. It is impossible to overstate it. Why? Because the single bullet theory is the sine qua non of the Warren Commission report. It's not a matter of how much weight and credibility do you give to it. It's a matter of whether or not you have a single bullet theory that permits you to conclude that there was only one person firing, whether it was Oswald or anybody else in the world. If you don't have a single bullet theory, then you cannot have a sole assassin. And if you move to that point, then you're into conspiracy by definition. And that's why it had to stop with Oswald as a sole assassin. And that's why they came up with the single bullet theory. There's no question in my mind that that 26-volume set should be taken from the shelves of all the libraries where they now rest in the United States from nonfiction and placed in the fiction shelves along with Tom Sawyer, Huckleberry Finn, and Gulliver's